everyone. Welcome back to another episode of LA Legal. I'm Liana. Of course, we have Neama, and today's guest is here all the way from Phoenix, Arizona.
Hi.
Thank you, Gordy, for joining us. Please introduce yourself, and we'll get started.
My name's Gordana Mikalacki. I'm an attorney and I practice personal injury, and my law firm is in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's called Elm Law Group.
Very nice. Thank you. All of us practice personal injury, and we're talking about Nipsey Hussle and a murder trial. How do you get so lucky? It's always up your alley, Neema.
Well, of course, we love talking about murders and murders here in our hometown of Los Angeles. Probably one of the biggest murders in recent LA history because of who the victim was. Obviously, every life matters, but Nipsey Hussle was really an icon both in the hip-hop community and just the broader Black community here in LA.
Correct. Okay, well, let's do a quick intro and we'll jump into it. So Nipsey Hussle's real name is actually Armayas Ashkadam. He grew up, as Neema said, in South LA, specifically in the Crenshaw district, which is known as one of the busiest areas in LA in terms of crime because of the high gang presence. At a very early age, he wanted to be involved in music and was actually invited to join Buttervision, where he began his rap career. As a teenager, he was jumped into a Rolling 60s Crip. He was very upfront about his gang affiliation in his early raps, but his objective was to get out of the streets and become a community leader. He was someone that was bringing hope to the Black community, and all of that was lost due to a senseless act of violence. So this is an interesting case, I think, because unlike all the other trials that we talk about, it wasn't really about who did it. It was about just really about why, right? This was the killing happened in 2019, so the era of cameras, right? Luckily, I guess, there were a ton of footage in that parking lot. And so I think it really just kind of helped prosecution narrow down really within a matter of weeks even, who the killer was, and so then let's talk about that. What do you guys think?
That's right. When the defense was putting together the case, they just basically conceded that, yes, obviously we have this camera footage and it's not a question of who did it, it's more of a question of motive. And so it's kind of interesting to see how the defense was putting on their case. And when I was paying attention to the case, I noticed what they were really trying to convey to the jury was, was it premeditated or was it a heat of passion crime was the biggest issue.
No, I agree. And look, this is a case, if you're the DA here in LA, you got to prosecute. After Kobe Bryant, it's Nipsey Hussle murals you see around the city. So obviously our district attorney here has a little bit of a reputation for being soft, but this is not the type of case you can be soft on. So prosecutors, when they filed, they went for first-degree murder. They went for attempted murder of the two victims. So if you're the defense here, there's generally speaking two broad categories of defense. Like you said, the first is, it wasn't me. The second was, I didn't mean to do it. Now, I don't think they're going to be able to credibly argue that this was an accident, but I thought it was a creative argument to try to get that first-degree murder down to manslaughter. And of course, we're talking about very significant sentences. First degree, obviously potential life. You got second degree, 25 to life. But if you can get down to manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, you can get significantly less time. And of course, we talked about how I recently took the bar exam. We all remember voluntary manslaughter. That's when you walk in on your significant other in bed with someone else.
Right.
So obviously not that circumstance, but I give them an A for creativity to try to fit the facts of this case into voluntary manslaughter or heat of passion.
Right. Well, a big part of that was a big part of the trial really centered around gang culture, right? And so we briefly talked about it before the podcast, but the inability or the difficulty the prosecution had in bringing witnesses really helped the defense in this sort of creative argument that, hey, well, let's backtrack and talk about the snitching. But this also kind of helped the defense while the prosecution was really trying to do their job, right? And so let's talk about snitching. Several witnesses told investigators that there was a conversation about snitching right before the shooting happened. They said that Nipsey told Holder, what's his name, Holder?
Eric
Holder, that questioned him about snitching. There was a conversation potentially about there's papers about you, referring to law enforcement documents. And so this is what ultimately pissed him off enough to go shoot all of the victims. So let's talk about premeditation and the 9 minutes he had to go back to the car, get the gun, come back, and shoot. What do you think?
So
Was
yeah,
that enough
yeah,
time?
yeah, premeditation, right? So to get first degree murder, you really need to show some sort of premeditation, right? And kind of the old definition was lying in wait. Well, obviously, no one's waiting to kill Nipsey Hussle here. But, the question is, if something happens, is it snitching? Are you upset because the girl you're dating thinks Nipsey Hussle's good looking? For whatever reason, you go back, you get the gun, you have some french fries or you eat something as well. So the prosecution said, listen, whatever pissed you off, you had plenty of time to get over it. You went back and you intended to come back and kill Nipsey Hussle. So that's premeditation. And something ultimately, I think, obviously resonated with the jurors. They bought that argument. And I think the prosecution did a pretty effective job getting around the sort of snitching thing. So what the defense argued, of course, was, calling someone a snitch is so bad.
Right.
It's literally like fighting
worst
words
thing,
that
yeah.
like you basically, and then they get too much into his mental health. It came out a little bit at sentencing. But they said that calling someone a snitch in the gang community is so bad that, it's not surprising that someone would lose it and come back and try to kill you.
Sure. Like a light switch just went off for him where he just did this.
Well, I mean, maybe this is just us because we've all been to law school, but that sort of case and the things that you talk about in your law school classes is like even 1 to 2 minutes is enough time to cool down and appreciate what you're about to do. So when you think about, you had this conversation and we've all seen the footage, right? He walks all the way back around the corner, has the french fries or whatnot. And I think it was like 9 or 10 minutes. In my mind, that's plenty of time to contemplate walking back, getting your gun, coming back, and this is what I'm going to do. And then ultimately pull the trigger not once, not twice, 10 times, kick him in the head, and then run off.
Right.
And so I think that, the prosecution did a great job conveying that, showing that, explaining that, because I don't think you need to have gone to law school to understand that that's more than enough time for him to really comprehend and appreciate what he's about to do.
Sure, and I think that the jurors obviously agreed. I mean, they saw it that way, They really saw that there was that time frame, that it was premeditated, that he had time to cool off. And I mean, shooting him 9 to 10 times is just that's a lot.
Well, he already came with guns, right? I mean, granted, Bryna Nicholson did testify that she didn't know that he had guns. She thought she was just driving him around the corner to meet with Nipsey. But he already had the guns on him, right? So to me, that shows, okay, whatever has happened, he already came in with a possible intention of causing violence. But who knows, right? These are gang members. Maybe they travel with guns all the time. So maybe he had it on him. But to me, the entire day sort of seems like there was already a plan in motion, depending on how the nature of the conversation would have turned out, for this to ultimately be the results. What do you guys think about that?
I think so too. I mean, yes, I think we can assume that in gang culture in LA, like they're probably always strapped. But again, just like with all of the facts that you had mentioned and with the testimony, it definitely showed, in my opinion, probably obviously the jurors agreed, that there was that premeditation, that he really did have the time to plan this. So
yeah, clearly, the 9 minutes, and that's what the DA pounded on again and again. Someone that has time to engage in this conversation with this girl he's dating, someone that has time to eat, someone that has the time to kind of take a step back, cooling off, whatever you want to call it, and then come back and shoot someone a bunch of times. That's intentional. That's planned. That's premeditation.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about jury selection, right? Because Neama, as you mentioned in the very beginning, this is a very sympathetic victim, right? This is someone that is huge in both the rap culture, the Black community, and just in the LA community in general. And so this is something we talk about in a lot of podcasts. How do you go about selecting an unbiased jury, especially in a case like this, right? Where you have an entire community that is aware of what happened. And again, there's footage and surveillance video everywhere. So let's talk about the questionnaire that they initially passed around, right? And hoping to find someone out there in the jury pool that doesn't know, or maybe is not a fan. As a prosecutor, you've obviously seen it, but what do you think is a good way to get around this kind of an issue?
Well, if I'm a prosecutor, I love this case. You have one of the
Yeah,
most
you do.
sympathetic victims there ever was. I mean, like, and I keep
Sure.
thinking about Kobe. I mean, the reason like Vanessa Bryant got such a
Right.
huge judgment. You're talking about someone that like is a hero in
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles, right? So here's someone that was killed for really no reason, and we know that jurors love celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
and here you have a celebrity victim who's been killed. So this is a great. I mean, look, like I said, I'm not trying to say that like his life mattered more, but this is just the reality of trying cases with juries. And if you have a very sympathetic victim who's been killed, I don't think Eric Holder had a chance.
Yeah.
Right.
Very, very true.
I mean, his memorial service was across
Right
the street
here.
at the Staples Center.
Staples-
I do not call it the Crypto Arena, but the Staples Center.
Yeah,
That
20,000
seats like
people there.
20,000 people, right? And it was full.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
he did so much for the community. I mean, even being from Arizona, like I've heard his music and like name one attorney who's on social media who hasn't posted his music, you know? So he's done so much for the LA community and like try to give back that like he really truly was people admired him and his loss was huge to the
Right.
community.
It was
So-
definitely an uphill battle for the defense. But Neama,
Yeah.
I have a question for you specifically because I saw this quote somewhere and I got to ask. So apparently there's, and I think you saw this because you watched the documentary, but there's a saying among prosecutors who deal with gang violence. I don't know if you're going to know what I'm talking about. Crimes committed in hell will not have angels as witnesses. Have you heard that? So
So yeah, so
Talk
look,
about that.
Look, when you are prosecuting any type of criminal organization, obviously this is a murder, but we're talking about street gangs, we're talking about the mob, we're talking about drug cartels. Your witnesses are not going to be choir boys, you know, they're going to have significant criminal history. They're not going to want to testify, right? Because that whole culture, I mean, setting aside the snitching, I mean, if you're a rat, I mean, we know what happens to snitches, right? I mean, I don't have to say it. So you're going to have witnesses that are going to get beat up on cross-examination because of their criminal history, because they don't want to be there, because they're lying, or just frankly, they're just not likable. They're members of the gang, right? So as you saw in this case, you had victims who didn't want to show up, didn't want to testify, witness. The prosecution had a big problem in this case because of the nature of it. So taking a step back, if you're the prosecution in any type of case involving any criminal enterprise, you don't want to rely on that type of testimony alone. You want independent evidence that can't be cross-examined like that. And fortunately, in this case, you had the video.
Yeah.
Well, they
Very
were
true.
successful in bringing in one. What was it? His name was Cowboy something. But he ultimately came.
You really came
It was
forward.
like so Cowboy something. I'm sorry, but he eventually came forward. He came in. He testified. He actually, it sounded like he was trying to protect Nipsey a little. He was like, "There's no the word snitch actually being thrown around." He's the one who suggested it was just about papers. And the jury bought it, though. And he was very big in the gang community. And he showed up, he testified. He even posted a video after saying, "Don't come for me, because if you are, then you're defending the other guy." That was how he got out of people coming at him from rival gangs.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the fact that he had to post that video afterwards kind of just shows you like the culture that we're talking about. People don't come forward. People don't usually want to be witnesses in these cases. So yeah, Cowboy was instrumental.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't remember the rest of his name either.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
But yeah, look, when you have a victim in the case, right? One of the attempted murder victims who comes forward and says, "I don't remember nothing about anything." I'm
right.
like, these people are scared and they're terrified
Sure.
to testify. So it happens a lot where witnesses, they disappear. And if you're handling a case like this, you have to prepare for that possibility that star witness of yours will either turn or they won't be there when trial comes around. Because it doesn't matter what they said. We all know under the Constitution and Confrontation Clause, if they don't come testify in person and be subject to cross-examination, you can't use their prior testimony. It's not like a deposition, right?
Sure.
Well, that doesn't happen in a criminal
so
case.
would you say that's something that prosecution just always prepares for?
Oh, yeah, in these types of cases. Look, there's two types of cases. If you're a prosecutor, you got to think that your witness may not show. Gang, mob, cartel cases are one. The other, sadly, domestic violence, man, sexual assault. The victims sometimes will recant. They won't show up. They'll reconcile with the perpetrator. So those are the types of cases when I was a prosecutor, I'm like, there's a possibility that, I have control of the victim or the witness today, but when I go to trial, that might not be the case.
Right.
So,
Right.
Who knows?
I mean, look, it's understandable. Most people don't want to be involved in trial, period. It could be a car accident. It could be, something like this. So imagine, right, if you are somebody with the longest rap sheet, right? You're some gang member and you have to come in and testify and this thing's going to be televised all over, which it was not.
Right.
But I understand it.
I get it. It's such a risk for their families too. And I mean, when they're getting examined, I mean, they're going to bring out everything that they've done and make them look like they're the least credible witness. So it's a little bit difficult for them to probably want to come forward for all of those reasons. Like, they don't want to sign up for that. They don't want to be there doing that. So
Right.
yeah, and we talked about a little bit of the televised portion. I think the fact that the witness testimony wasn't all televised, that was something that was helpful for the prosecution as well.
Right.
You got the lawyers talking during opening and closing, obviously sentencing, but look, for me, even though I'm a former prosecutor, I don't do defense. I think the entire trial should be televised. I mean, it's an open trial. These are public. That's not something I necessarily agree with, but I'm sure that's something that helped the prosecution. Often judges will say, hey, if an individual witness doesn't want to be on camera, they'll often accommodate that. But I think we had a pretty blanket no witness testimony or limited in this case. So
Right.
Right.
Talk to your viewers a little bit about sentencing and your thoughts on it.
yeah, so on sentencing, Holder got 60 years, 60 to life, which is a lot. But look, you got your first degree murder, so you got 25 there. Use of a firearm is an enhancement, another 25 years. And then interestingly, 10 years for the attempted murder, even though he was acquitted of attempted murder. So obviously we know attempt, you have to intend to kill someone or attempt to want to kill someone. And I think the jurors bought, well, look, even if you think that this was murder just related to Nip only. It wasn't related to these other individuals that happened to be in the line of fire. But judges can consider what they call relevant conduct during sentencing, and I think this judge wanted to send a message. It's a pretty significant sentence. I've seen murderers get less, but again, I think just like there's pressure on the DA, judges are ordinary people, and I think this particular judge had to or wanted to really send a message that like what you did was beyond the pale. There's really no reason to do this, whether it's a girl, whether it's being called a snitch, to kill someone, execute them in cold blood for no good legal or moral reason.
Not that there ever is.
No, never.
Sure.
There never is, But here's not, maybe it would have been different if, he pled guilty. A Holder pled and said, listen, I have schizophrenia. Some of the stuff that came out in sentencing, right? I have mental health issues. I'm paranoid, delusional. You have all these mental health experts that come. You kind of present a mitigation package is one thing. But when you push the case to trial, everyone has a constitutional right to trial. I'm not saying they don't. I think judges are a little bit less inclined to be lenient in those cases.
Why do you guys think that the mental health angle wasn't pushed more? Right? Because we see that happening a lot, right? It comes off as either mitigation, like primary defense. Why do you guys think that didn't really have a big, significant impact during the trial?
I thought the same thing. Like, why did they not plead insanity? Why was that not his defense? Do you have any insight on that, Neama?
Yeah, I think maybe they thought that they had a chance at this voluntary manslaughter. Again, it's not something I'd ever seen. I'm doing this more than 20 years where someone says, like, hey, snitch, equals that heat of passion. I thought it was a creative argument. Maybe they thought, listen, if we go to the jury and we accept some responsibility, right? Because, insanity, if you're not guilty by reason of insanity, you're not guilty, right?
Sure.
So maybe the defense thought that we have to accept something, right? It's like when, obviously, we do personal injury when the defense comes and they accept liability but they dispute damages, right?
Sure.
That maybe takes a little bit of the wind out of our sails, whereas they come and say like, hey man, like this is completely, not our client's fault. And, you might like really piss off the jurors and, lose credibility. So I think they wanted to take this, let me meet you halfway, not quite 6 years halfway, but maybe try to get, 5-10 years here. Whereas if they said, listen, we're not responsible at all, again, it's swinging for the fences. And if, a jury buys that, then you walk entirely. But I think they were thinking to themselves, there's absolutely no way.
Right.
They're
Because
gonna buy it.
his public defender came out. I mean, watching both of their opening statements, it was almost like identical, right? There was no, well, my client does XYZ. It was just, yep, he did it, and you're right. They sort of stepped ahead of the really bad facts.
Right.
And they accepted responsibility up front and then just kind of pedaled back and explained this whole snitch situation during the trial.
Sure. I feel like it's Law School 101 where they teach you, like, you always have to concede the bad facts. Like, you have your defendant, he's on video, he's shown to be doing this. Like, you just have to concede the bad facts. So, probably along the lines of what you said, Neama, that that's...
I mean, they caught him in every possible angle,
Sure.
right? I mean, it was the entire... I don't know if I've ever seen a parking lot with... I mean, for some of our car accident videos, we're like, we can't find one angle.
Yeah.
And this entire plaza was like bugged with surveillance. So the guy really didn't stand a chance, I think, at all. They really did get him in every possible angle.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely wasn't a well thought out murder in terms of, there's so much evidence.
Which maybe is what the defense was thinking in terms of like this being the heat of passion, right? Because it was like a Sunday afternoon, broad daylight,
Who would do this?
Who would do that when there's the entire, you see it in the video, the parking lot is full, there's people standing around talking. And so that was my first thought. Okay, well, maybe this is what they're getting at, is that this isn't something that was thought out. It wasn't discreet. It just happened in broad daylight.
Yeah, no, same thing. Like, I mean, I kind of thought that to myself, like, oh my gosh, like, this is the worst possible time if you're going to do something like this. You've got like all these witnesses. Maybe he didn't know that the parking lot was being filmed, but still, I mean, it's just broad daylight. So,
and I think that's what made it so shocking. Not only is this, a huge celebrity Grammy winning artist, but he just like gets gunned down in the middle of the street. So I think it's shocking. It's really sad and really unfortunate. I think it was a huge loss to the community.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're talking about a really brazen murder, and obviously it was a loss to LA, but it was one of those stories that, like, across the country, like, these liberal cities, like, crime is out of control, and it really was like, I mean, it's crazy to like just gun someone down, after he was signing autographs for fans, a short time before. Right. So.
Yeah. And that girl, right? She takes a picture, goes about her day, she goes back in the car, posts it on Facebook, thinking she's met like, her celebrity crush, and then 9 minutes later she's a potential suspect in a murder.
Wow.
So talk about bad timing.
Yeah, wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
Watch what you post on social media.
Right, exactly. Okay, well, final thoughts on this.
I mean, it was just an interesting trial to follow. Like Neama said, anytime, all lives are very important, but anytime it's a celebrity life, I feel like the jury, the public, everyone's just so interested in the trial. So I think it brought a lot of awareness to gangs, violence, the snitching culture, and all of it. So, I mean, it was interesting to watch that. And again, like, having that footage was just insane to me.
I agree.
Well, Gordy, let everyone know. Obviously, you said you're firm, but where can they find you on social media?
Oh, yeah. You can find me at Lawyer Gordy on TikTok, Instagram, and thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for flying in.
Yeah,
Is it super hot in Arizona?
No, it's actually nice still. So
it's nice.
We've got a few months. But
nice.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much for flying in, and we'll see you all next time.